The story begins with a fierce and brutal battle. Ragnar is surrounded by enemies, with only his brother Rollo left by his side. Bodies lie scattered all around, the air reeks of blood, yet neither of them is willing to surrender. Just two men cut down so many enemies that the battlefield falls silent within moments. As soon as the battle ends, Ragnar begins to see strange visions. Black ravens circle the sky, and he feels as if some shadow is carrying the dying souls away with it. Ragnar takes this as a sign, as if fate itself is pushing him toward a greater path. A few days later, we see his home light. His wife Lagertha is by the river, fishing with their daughter. Meanwhile, Ragnar is teaching his son Bjorn how to hold a weapon and the basics of fighting. By the time evening falls and Lagertha returns, Ragnar tells her that their son is now ready for a special ritual. Lagertha wants to postpone it until next year, but Ragnar believes the right time has come and that destiny should not be delayed. That night, Ragnar reassures his wife that he will take complete care of their son. The next morning, he sets out with Bjorn. On the way, the innocent boy asks what will happen in the ritual. Ragnar tells him that some criminals will be punished there and plans for the future will be discussed. This is where Ragnar's way of thinking becomes clear. Everyone else always sails their ships eastward, but Ragnar's eyes are fixed on the west. He wants to know about those unknown lands, to understand the people who live there, because he believes that true gold, wealth, and fame are waiting for him there. And this is where the story of a man begins who is not just a warrior, but someone who will change the course of history. Meanwhile, as soon as Ragnar leaves home, the atmosphere there begins to change. Lagertha is alone when two strangers suddenly appear. Their eyes reveal darker intentions. Sensing the danger, Lagertha sends her daughter away. In the very next moment, she changes. She is no longer a woman who silently endures, but a warrior. As the two men move forward, Lagertha attacks them. Within seconds, she leaves them in such a state that running away to save their lives becomes their only sensible choice. The next morning, Ragnar arrives at the tribal grounds with Bjorn. A crowd has already gathered there. Soon, Rollo arrives as well and laughingly tells Bjorn that after today, he will no longer be just a child, but a man. He hands him a sip of alcohol and says that now he is becoming like them. Then Rollo asks Ragnar where the king will send them this time. The eastern lands have already been emptied. Ragnar replies softly that this is exactly why the time has come to go west. The people there are rich and worship a different god. Rollo laughs it off as a story and says who would ever find a path in the open sea. Ragnar then pulls out a special stone from his pocket and explains that at noon, it should be held in sunlight. The shadow it casts will show whether they are heading in the right direction. If the shadow stays in the middle of the mark, they are moving west. Even in cloudy skies, this stone can reveal the sun's position. Soon, everyone reaches the king's assembly. As soon as the king arrives, he announces judgments for criminals. A man is found guilty of murder in a land dispute and is sentenced to death without delay. His head is immediately cut off. Rollo whispers to Ragnar that this was not justice. The king wanted his land. Then, as part of the ritual, children are dressed as warriors and made to swear loyalty. They are told that from today onward, they are men of the tribe. Talk then begins about traveling east again. At that moment, Ragnar speaks up in front of everyone and says that this time they should go west. Gold, wealth, and a new religion all lie there. The king dismisses his words as pointless imagination and says that there is nothing but endless sea in that direction. During the feast, the king calls Ragnar over and sternly warns him that he has questioned the king's honor in front of everyone. If this happens again, the consequences will not be good. As he leaves, the king tells his men to keep an eye on Ragnar. Hearing all this, Ragnar does not stop. He takes Bjorn with him and leaves, telling his son that they're going to see Floki. As they enter the forest, they find a strange man standing there. Bjorn associates his name with the god Loki. The man laughs and says, "My name is Floki. I'm not a god, just a man who builds boats." Ragnar smiles and says that this is the man whose boats are made to fight the waves. Floki takes them to a large ship he has specially prepared for a western voyage. He explains that it has no nails. Instead, the wood is joined in such a way that the ship doesn't stop when it hits waves but moves forward with them. Winking, he adds that there's no need to be afraid. Soon they will all be rich. Within days, the special ship is ready to be launched. There is slight nervousness on Floki's face, but confidence in his eyes. As the ship is lowered into the sea for the first time, everyone holds their breath. When they reach deep water, Ragnar unfurls the sail. The wind fills it, and the ship moves forward, as if conversing with the waves. Seeing the speed, everyone's faces light up. Floki smiles and says that he told them his mind was unmatched and that they will surely reach the west. But all this does not go unnoticed. One of the king's men spots the new ship. That night, Ragnar quietly gathers his trusted men in one place. Eric steps forward forward and says that everyone has arrived as instructed, and each has sworn on his arm ring that today's secret will not reach anyone else. Ragnar tells them that for years they have gone east, and now there is nothing left to plunder there. But he is certain that true wealth lies in the west. The king will never allow it, so they must leave in secret. The ship is ready. The way to find the path is ready. All that is needed is trust. After the raid, everyone will get an equal share. Hearing this, everyone agrees wholeheartedly. The next morning, shrouded in mist, they all board the great ship and set out toward the unknown. The journey is long, but hope shines on every face. At noon, Ragnar takes out the sunstone. Its shadow lies perfectly in the center, meaning they're on the right path. Night falls, yet no one is willing to turn back. Then the sea shows its true nature. Fierce winds, towering waves, and a black sky. A dangerous storm blocks their way. The sails are lowered, the ship is secured, and everyone rows with all their strength to survive. Amid the storm, Floki's face grows tense. Rollo looks at the sky and says that Thor is striking with his hammer and that the gods are angry. Floki laughs and replies that if the gods were angry, their ship would have sunk first. This lightning is not their punishment, but their celebration. The gods like their ship and are showing them the way. Meanwhile, far to the west, some priests see the same storm and tremble in fear, sensing a great disaster approaching. The night somehow passes. By morning, everyone is exhausted from rowing. One man finally loses hope and says there is nothing but water here, no land. Trusting Ragnar was his biggest mistake. He curses the gods and screams that they are all going to die. Without wasting a moment, Ragnar steps forward and kills him. Then he tells his brother to release the ravens. If they return, it means there is only sea ahead. If they do not, land is near. After a long wait, the ravens do not return. Soon after, seabirds appear flying in the distance. Hope sparks in everyone's eyes. This is the first sign that land is close. Moments later, through the mist, they see the outline of land ahead. On the shore stands a church with priests inside. As soon as they see the ship approaching, they ring the alarm bell. Ragnar is the first to step onto land and tells his men not to separate and not to waste their lives unnecessarily. They advance straight to the church. The first blow lands on the heavy door, with splintering. When the door finally falls, an eerie silence fills the place. Only faint voices come from one room, where terrified priests are praying. When the Vikings enter, they see the priests standing unarmed. But mercy has vanished from every heart. In moments, the place turns into a slaughterhouse. Screams, blood, and terror spread everywhere. Those who try to hide are dragged out and brutally killed. At this moment, they are no longer men, but beasts driven by savagery. Amid this, Ragnar notices gold and silver lying around. He is astonished at how such treasure could be left unguarded. Then he finds a priest hiding, trembling in fear. The man begs for his life, swearing by their gods not to kill him. Ragnar is surprised and asks how he knows about their gods. The priest explains that they travel far and wide to spread their religion. Rollo arrives and looks around, saying the place is strange. No women anywhere, only these men. He asks why Ragnar has spared the priest. He should be killed too, but Ragnar refuses. He says they will take him along and sell him as a slave. They gather all the treasure from the church and, as they leave, set the place on fire. Flames rise high into the sky. Then they board their great ship and head home, the priest chained among them. The long, exhausting journey comes to an end. Ragnar has succeeded in his purpose. His eyes now hold peace and joy, not just dreams. The West truly existed. Now he only waits to return among his people and tell his story. On the way, the priest suddenly tells Ragnar that one of his companions has died. When they check, the man is indeed dead. Without any ritual, they commit his body to the sea, and the ship moves on. When they finally reach their village, joy spreads everywhere at the sight of them. Ragnar tells everyone that this is just the beginning. There are vast stores of gold and silver there, and things they have never even seen before. At that moment, the king's man Canute steps forward and announces that the king orders all the loot to be presented to him immediately. Soon after, Ragnar stands before the king and says that this is only the beginning. There is far more gold there. There were only a few priests unarmed, and everything ended in moments. He has even brought one of them alive. Ragnar asks the priest why there was so much gold in his god's house. Are their gods greedy too? Smiling, the priest replies that for them, there is only one God. People offer gold and silver so that after death, they may have a place in heaven. The next morning, Ragnar again comes before the king with the priest. He says he wants to go west again. Near the place they raided, there is another city with even more wealth. He promises that whatever they find will belong to the king, as always. The king says it is possible, but Ragnar explains that instead of risking lives needlessly, it is better that those who have already been there go again. Eventually, the king agrees, agrees, but on one condition. This time his man Canute will go with them. When Ragnar returns home, he tells Lagertha that this time she will go west with him. The priest will look after the children and the fields. Bjorn is now old enough to manage. The next morning, they all board the ship and once again set sail westward. This time, the sea is calm. The sunstone works perfectly, and the journey is easy. As soon as they land on the other side, some soldiers stop them and say that if they are traitors, they can be taken to King El. In response, swords are drawn. Within moments, the soldiers fall dead. One manages to escape, but another is captured alive, and with his help, they reach the city. Before the attack, Ragnar tells Lagertha that no one should show reckless bravery and no one should be left alone. As soon as the church bell rings, the entire city moves toward it. The streets are emptied, and weapons are left outside the church. This is their chance. The doors are broken down, and they rush inside. A crowd of people is gathered there. Without wasting time, the attack begins. Screams, chaos, and blood fill the hall. Priests cry out that this is God's house and beg them to stop. Ragnar calmly replies that there is no need to fear. Their God is right there. Gold, silver, and every valuable thing is taken. Even Floki drinks the sacrificial wine. Meanwhile, Canute enters a house and confronts a woman. When he tries to force himself on her, Lagertha intervenes and tries to save the woman. But Canute kills her on the spot. Then he turns toward Lagertha and says that now she will pay the price. In response, Lagertha kills him right there. As they prepare to leave, Ragnar asks where Canute is. Lagertha calmly replies, "I killed him. He touched my honor." As they step out of the church, soldiers already waiting attack them. This time, the enemy is far more numerous, but every one of Ragnar's men is worth several soldiers. Swords clash, shields shatter, and within moments, the ground is once again soaked in blood. Ragnar's warriors fight as if possessed by madness. Ordinary soldiers cannot stand against them. The terror becomes so great that their commander flees to save his life. Some of Ragnar's men are killed, but victory is his. When the fleeing commander reaches his king, the king angrily asks why he ran. The commander, trembling, says they seemed less like raiders and more like demons. He has never seen such mad and bloodthirsty warriors. There was no fear in their eyes. Some time later, Ragnar returns to his village with even greater treasure. This time, the king himself welcomes them and listens to the tale. Ragnar tells him they fought a large army and still emerged victorious. Impressed, the king says that Ragnar has proven himself a great warrior and will receive a larger share of the loot. Then he asks where Canute is. Ragnar answers without hesitation that he killed him. The king asks why. Ragnar states plainly that Canute dishonored his wife. With a cold smile, the king says it is a good story and orders Ragnar's arrest. Soldiers move forward and seize him. After this, the king summons Rollo. He tells him that his brother is capable, but always takes all the glory. Without Rollo, he would never have reached this far. He has taken Rollo's rightful place. Then the king offers him a deal. He says that his brother's game is coming to an end, but if Rollo wishes, he can take his place, serve the king loyally, and meet his daughter. He can marry her. The king has no sons, so whoever marries his daughter will inherit everything after him. The only condition is that Rollo must testify against Ragnar the next day. The next day, the time comes for judgment. Ragnar is brought before the king and the people. The king declares that a murderer stands before them, one who killed his man Canute. Ragnar stands and admits that he killed Canute, but only because Canute dishonored his wife. He asks the people whether they would not do the same. The king cuts him off and says to stop these lies. He has a witness who saw everything. Rollo is brought forward. The king asks him whether it is not true that Ragnar killed Canute without cause. Rollo looks at everyone and says that it is true Ragnar killed Canute, but it is also true that Canute dishonored his wife. Ragnar did the right thing and is guilty of no crime. Ragnar immediately shouts to open the gates. When he is freed, he goes to Rollo and says that he owes him a lifelong debt. Rollo replies with a faint smile, "Then spend your whole life repaying it." Meanwhile, the king visits a seer to glimpse his future. The seer speaks of terrifying things, saying that bloodshed is coming, bodies will lie everywhere, and Ragnar is seeking the path to the king's death by consulting the gods because he wants to remove him and become king himself. The next day, Ragnar has no idea of this conspiracy. He talks to the priest about Valhalla, explaining that warriors who die in battle are taken by Odin to Valhalla, their heaven. After that, Ragnar goes hunting in the forest. Meanwhile, Bjorn sees the king's men entering the village. He runs to save his life, but the soldiers mercilessly attack the people. A massacre begins everywhere. Hearing the screams, Lagertha realizes that an attack has begun. She gathers her children in one place as the king's men drown the village in blood outside. When the screams reach Ragnar's ears, he abandons everything and runs toward home. home. Seeing the scene before him, his blood boils. His people are being killed. Ragnar charges at the enemies, without thinking. Whoever comes before him, he cuts down. Swords break, bodies fall. In one clash, his leg is wounded, but he does not retreat. A single man slaughters many soldiers, but the enemy is so numerous that he cannot save many of his people. As Ragnar moves toward his home, one of the king's soldiers shoots an arrow at him. The arrow pierces his body, but he snaps it off, ignoring the pain. He tells his wife and children to escape through the secret passage and not to worry about him, saying he will find them. Lagertha takes the children and escapes through the tunnel. At the same time, the king and his soldiers surround the house. Ragnar knows that if he does not go out, his people will be killed. He steps forward himself. His body is soaked in blood, yet he stands like a shield. Meanwhile, Lagertha reaches the river with the children and the priest and escapes by boat. The king angrily tells Ragnar that he has betrayed his king and that the only punishment is death. Seizing a moment, Ragnar suddenly attacks, steals a horse, and escapes. Soldiers chase him. On the way, Ragnar deliberately abandons the horse at a turn and hides in the bushes, but the soldiers realize his trick and continue the pursuit. Ragnar flees toward the mountains. When he reaches the riverbank, Lagertha is waiting below in the boat. Exhausted and bleeding, Ragnar falls into the water and begins to drown. Without thinking, the priest jumps in and somehow pulls him out. They all climb into the boat and escape. Some time later, the king's soldiers arrive and report that Ragnar has escaped. At that moment, King Bjorni of Sweden arrives. The king announces that he will marry his daughter to Bjorni. Hearing this, both his wife and daughter are shattered. Meanwhile, Lagertha calls Floki. Floki takes Ragnar to his home and says that too much blood has been lost and the wound must be cauterized. Lagertha herself takes a knife and, with trembling hands, seals Ragnar's wound. Elsewhere, the king's wife tries to stop him, saying the man is far older and more ruthless than him. The king replies that he is powerful and that this alliance will strengthen their kingdom. Their sons have been killed, their severed heads laid at their feet. That wound is still alive. After seeing such days, marrying an old man does not seem so bad. Time passes and winter arrives. One day, Ragnar's friend Thorstein arrives and says that the king's soldiers are watching them constantly and that he barely managed to escape. Meanwhile, the king celebrates his daughter's wedding with great pomp. The next morning, the king's soldiers drag Rollo in chains and ask him where Ragnar is. Rollo says Ragnar is dead, but he is brutally tortured. That evening, Thorstein runs to Ragnar and tells him that his brother has been captured and will die, but he will not reveal Ragnar's location. Floki understands that this is a trap and warns Ragnar, but Ragnar calmly says to go to the king and challenge him to open combat. If he refuses, tell him that such cowardice will never take him to Valhalla. The next day, Floki delivers the challenge in the king's court. The king initially refuses, but then remembers the seer's terrifying prophecy. To change fate, he accepts the challenge. Hearing this, Lagertha begins preparing for the next day, but Ragnar's wounds have not healed. She asks how he will fight in this condition. Meanwhile, the king anxiously tells his wife that tomorrow they must kill the man they once honored the most, the one who showed them the path to the west, and that tomorrow his blood will take them there. The next morning, Ragnar finally stands before the king for the duel. The entire field is eager for battle, and the king stands with all his strength. Without a word, they clash. Swords collide, and soon Ragnar's sword breaks. They then fight with shields, but those two shatter. New weapons are given, and the fight resumes. Bjorn shouts that his father will win. The battle is so fierce that neither is willing to yield. Some shout to finish Ragnar, while others urge the king to hold on. In the midst of it, the king seriously wounds Ragnar. But when the moment comes, Ragnar strikes and kills the king in a single blow, sending him crashing to the ground. Ragnar then sees a raven in the sky. He goes to the king and says that the god Odin has come, and now they will see who goes to Valhalla with him. The king replies that he will. Ragnar cuts his artery. Svigi tries to stop the bleeding, but the king pushes her away and says that tonight he will celebrate in Valhalla with his sons, and then he dies. The king's follower tries to kill Ragnar, but Rollo confronts him with an axe and stops him. Svigi also steps against the king to protect her daughter and says that Ragnar should live. After this event, everyone accepts Ragnar as their new king, and this is where the first part of Vikings ends. But this is only the beginning. Ragnar is now king. The question is whether he will go west and pile up mountains of corpses, or do something different for the people there. In the west, there are 4 great kingdoms with the power to erase Ragnar's name. But now Ragnar will step into the west stronger than ever. Will he sink like the sun forever, or will a new empire's sun rise there? All this will be revealed in the next part. So don't forget to like and share the video. Tell us your thoughts on Vikings Part 2 in the comments, and and subscribe to be ready for the next video.